engine.
Oh, man.
Okay,
I
breaks
can't
it.
believe I would see the day. We
and
might
there's the punish.
possibly see it.
Oh,
Oh
yes!
my gosh!
There it goes.
Look at the
Manipulating.
scaling, the damage.
Here comes the corkscrew, the wall.
Oh,
the
he
tag
got him.
catch.
Let's go, Margin.
Oh my God, it was a low at that range. Jesus, I can't believe it. JDCR.
Oh, he gets it. One more hit can do it.
Oh my
The block
God.
and
He did it!
When we think of grapplers, we think of the untackable, big damage throws like Potemkin, Buster, and SPD. What do we think about when it comes to 3D grapplers? Well, what's up fellas, my name is Panda, and today we're going to be talking about a 3D grappler that was deceitful and very different from the usual 3D grappler design. Other thing is, I'm trying to 3,000 subs, so if we could try and meet that goal, I will make the Taker video. I've said this many a times, Taker I'm not a fan of, but who knows, maybe when I do a deep dive, I might become a fan, right? Eventually I'm just not. That's what I'm going to leave it at. Today we're going to be talking about a 3D grappler that stands out compared to others, and I think I need to tell you what a 3D grappler wants so you understand why this one is so different. 3D grapplers are about threatening the classic strike throw game plan, except there's a difference. You can tech the command grab. So it's about checking the opponent's reactions with different techs for throws. For King, it's about mixing up between the left arm, right arm, and both arms. You need tech accordingly, and he does this to keep people on their toes. These characters are usually quite good at getting in. What happens if you must get in on the 3D grappler? We need to head into that game of today. Transcending history and the world. A tale of souls and souls.
Eternally retold. Soulcalibur 2.
Soulcalibur 2 came out in 2002 on consoles being the PS2, the original Xbox, and the GameCube. And it took fighting game scene by storm as one of the coolest 3D fighters next to Tekken. It really stood out, right? Virtua Fighter was slowly dipping off. You had Virtua Fighter 4 at the time standing out, and Tekken, of course, was a massive long-running successful series. And Soul Blade and Soulcalibur was standing right next to it as a 3D fighter. The game had 3 different versions like I mentioned before, but the interesting thing about this, and it became a trend for Soulcalibur up until about Soulcalibur 5, was that each console would get its own unique guest character. Yes! It was so awesome. It was so rad. If you played on the PlayStation, you got the old man, the king of the iron fist, Heihachi. If you played on the Xbox, you got Spawn, which was so rad, because Spawn is just, he's as sick as it, you're not arguing it, he's sick as hell. And on the GameCube, you got a first ever, and that was a guest character from Nintendo, and everybody knows about it, Link. So, Soulcalibur 2 was actually insane, it was so good, but enough about that, we need to talk about the game and its mechanic. Soulcalibur 2 was a weapon-based 3D fighter, meaning exaggerated fighting style. It was a 4-button fighter with A being used for horizontal attacks, B being used for vertical attacks, K being used to do kicks, and G being used to block, meaning you had to press guard to block in this game, you couldn't hold back. But to describe all the buttons, B and A were essentially your vertical and horizontal attacks. You use the vertical to kind of like poke away at your opponent, deal some good damage, and they tend to be your launchers, whereas your horizontal attacks were good for calling out sidesteps, and essentially trying to do 8-way runs in multiple directions. When it came to your kick buttons, they tend to lack tracking and then some type of far reach, but it made up for being very quick. So you use kicks as kind of like a parry option or some type of mash out depending on the character you played. Keelik, for example, had a very quick kick that was used on defense. When it came to movement on this game, it was really sick. Not only did you have the be able to walk in any direction, you also had the 8-way run, which means that you could run in any direction that you wanted to, kind of making this game a bit more accessible than Tekken, where sidestepping doesn't make a whole lot of sense until you really dived into the game. I'm someone with thousands of hours, and I don't stand out with the competitive scene. When it came to mechanics in this game, it had plenty. It had the soul charge mechanic that let you charge up for counter hits and cancel out of some of your moves. The game also had throws. By pressing guard and an attack button together, you get a throw, which led to the next mechanic. Ring outs existed in this game, meaning you could be on low health and make a comeback due to a nice play of using your surroundings. I think they're a bit BS, but I kinda love them because the character I played and who I will be covering used them a lot. You also had guard crushes, which allowed for a free hit if these moves were blocked. They tend to be very slow and tend to have some type of weakness. For example, they were sidesteppable or they were very easy to mash out on. Finally, when it came to defensive mechanics, you obviously had sidestepping to avoid vertical attacks, and you also had a tool called Guard Impact, which allowed you to parry an attack if you're in a nasty situation and you got really good at timing. It also gives a turn to run offense, but your opponent can guard impact you back, meaning you can get these types of scenarios, but they weren't that common. Also, a very fun mechanic in this game, if you did a vertical attack when your opponent did a horizontal attack, you would actually crush the horizontal attack, meaning there was attack priority, and kick had the lowest obviously. But besides that, that's all the base mechanics that you need to know. It is time for the character of today, the grappler of today. The Golem of Destruction, a soldier of the heretics, the Prince of Hell, Astaroth. Astaroth is the grappler today, and today we will talk about how he is deceiving and how he is a sick design. He's a grappler of the game, and in Soulcalibur it's filled with fun lore. Astaroth was created by the god Ares to retrieve the demonic sword Soul Edge after losing half of himself to Sophistics. Oh Christ, this is tough to say. Nightmare took up the blade and Astaroth decided to work with him to obtain souls to make the sword stronger for his god. He wanted to turn on him, but Maxi killed him in a 1v1, no-scoped him. After being killed, he was revived, but parts of Soul Edge were merged with him. He started to get more of a mind of his own and said, F these cult guys who made them in the first place, and killed them. Now he does his own thing, terrorizing for souls and power. He wants to get back at Maxi. The lore is mad, but it's really fun if you want to look it up and just enjoy the world of Soulcalibur. It felt not well written, but written in a way that's coherent and fun until you get to the sex game. We ignore that. The best way to put it, Astaroth was filled with intrusive thoughts. If he had the idea like, I'm gonna punch someone or I'm gonna kick a baby, he's gonna kick a baby. This character was designed to be a grappler, and the fact that he was a villain made it very interesting compared to the usual big body grappler design. And like we mentioned with King, he wanted to get into threaten his throw game, but it was different when it came to Astaroth. The character was designed to be a grappler get in on, and I thought that was fun as a villain design for grappler, because usually the hero design of the grappler is someone who has to get in and threaten a strike throw, but you have to kind of get in on him. He wasn't a zoner, but he poked away at you. His weapon of choice was a massive axe, and that is how he was able to do it so easily. He was able to slash and bash his opponents, and he would use it to pull them in for devastating throws. He had massive pokes and some sick command grabs. We'll get into his negatives before we dive deeper into what made him a deceitful grappler. In terms of negatives, he had a massive one. He was big and sluggish, which is kinda normal for grapplers, but in a 3D one, not so much. You look at King, he has good movement. You look at Armor King, he has good movement. You look at Wolf, he even has good movement. But because of this, it meant that he had a tough time stepping attacks. And his attacks were also slow, meaning some of his kicks could be beaten by some A or B attacks for the faster members of the roster. So yeah, if you were up against Maxi and you press a kick, you could get interrupted pretty easily. And this allowed for plenty of counter hit opportunities. I mentioned before, verticals could break horizontals, aka A could beat B, but the thing is, kicks had no priority, meaning if he wasn't quick enough, counter hits would definitely happen against his character. Having slow attacks made him susceptible to counter hits from most pokes. These were the key negatives that kinda held him back. They were pretty big. Sure, they may be short, but they were massive in what they did against them. But besides that, let's get into what made him very deceitful now. To note the positives of the character quickly, he could do very high damage of pokes and combos. In this game, combos can be escaped with a mechanic known as air control. You can control where your characters go and while they're being air juggled, meaning you can make combos insanely difficult for others. But him having simple juggles and throws allowed him to do pretty good damage for a combo game. He didn't have the issue that other characters had, where they had to keep it short and simple. When he did damage. But yeah, he also had a complete throw game and did a ton of damage. He even got nasty OK, and some will lead to ring outs. He did insanely well with the base mechanics. His guard impact situations were very powerful if you got really good at them, and he was also a very easy to learn character. The most amount of learning went into the base game and executing throws. But yeah, let's get started with the main reason that I want to make this video, and that is how deceitful he was. He was a grappler that was great at contesting space, meaning you had to get in on him. But the thing is, he wasn't someone who was zoning, it was just that he would chip away bits of your health with every interaction that you did trying to get in. You would get in, without a doubt, right? It wasn't like you're fighting Axel or something like that. Rest in peace, bottom tier. But it was a case of like, you would get in against this character. It was very simple. But you would lose bits of your health here and there with these large pokes that you represent. 6-6B, which allowed him to poke from afar, and it would break A attacks for advantage. He had other tools like poking with running free or A. He does this long reaching attack that hits grounded to chunks of health. His other main tool for staggering with pokes was definitely 214A, which he would spin kind of like a Beyblade. But the thing is, he could mash it out to do a maximum of like 8, I believe. Or he could do 4, or he could do 3, and he could control wherever way he goes. He could go forward, back, up, down. So this was a tool that was very hard to check because there were so many variables. He could do this to approach, and if he didn't get the hit, he could back out. But then he could back in, kind of like mix on Faust. Except, unlike Faust, he had a clean hit property, meaning if the first hit landed, and only the first hit, you'd get this animation. And as you can see, does a chunky bit of damage, and you may think this can lead to a ring out. Never will. Labbed it, sat there long enough, it'll never lead to a ring out, but it will leave the opponent right next to the edge, where Astaroth's key strengths definitely kick in. His sidestepping with AA was also great for a far-reaching poke and hitting so goddamn far. He had so many tools to check the opponent with, depending on their space. Not to mention some of his high damaging ones as well. He just had damage, he had reach, and you had to play into that when you were against him. Unless you were playing someone like Ivy, and that's where another weakness of his came in. He had a tough time against someone who could outreach him. Once he gets in, he had also really good pressure. He had this headbutt that could be held and could be done a second time, and if it was held or got a counter hit, it'd lead to another guaranteed headbutt. This led to good chunky damage and obviously a good pressure tool. The fact that you can hold it and do a second one, meaning you can kind of feint and go for a throw instead. Very cheeky indeed. It was safe, takes up a good bit of space, and being a ring out tool, he also had this bull charge, which was safe on block and on hit would lead to a ring out. And the thing is, he would space the opponent out on block, meaning he could do a bull rush again, or he could go for a spacing trap with one of his horizontals, meaning the opponent had to go like, I need RPS, do I challenge the bull rush, or do I take space to beat the horizontals? So there was a bit of a mind game going on there. But yeah, obviously the main thing you've got to talk about the Grappler is its throws, and Astaroth had some very powerful ones. In terms of throws, he had a whole kit that was made to catch you off guard. He had an atomic drop that did chunky damage and gave him the best Oki that he'd won. And this Oki would allow for catches or resetting into a throw. So basically he could look the scenario, or he can go for strike for a launch. Very evil indeed. He also had this throw where you toss the opponent up, and this was also a very powerful one because if you wanted damage, this was the command grab you'd go for. It let you do AAB as an OTG and deal 50% of the opponent's health. But yeah, these were his key throws to opening up the opponent, except he had one issue with this throw, and that is they were very stubby compared to some other members of the roster. But yeah, to go back to guard impact, Astaroth had some of the best strengths of guard impact. It was really good on him specifically, because when you did a guard impact with your opponent, yeah, it was a bit of an RPS. It's like, do you guard impact back, or do you block out, or do you guess 50-50? And Astaroth was good in this regard because his 50-50 was threatening a strike throw. Meaning, it was scary to deal with, and guard impacting dangerously could get you killed. And of course this leads back to his bull rush, and it also leads back to the headbutts, and it also leads to his throw game. Like mentioned before, very powerful once he's in. But in terms of positives, that was all mostly it. He had very powerful setups, amazing defense, and his offense was ridiculous. In terms of defense with pokes, didn't have it, but guard impact and getting good with that, and getting good with ring outs was the thing that made him really stand out. And you had to ask yourself, what did high level Astrovs look like? It's a new day. And this is the sad part where I had to say, no matter how much time I spent scouring, I could not find many high level Astrovs. Either it wasn't archived back in the older days, or in terms of modern day, nobody really wants to play him because he's a lot weaker compared to some of the other scary members of the cast like Assassin, Blizzardman, and Sophia. So sadly, I couldn't get the high level footage that I'm always able to find somehow on these other grapplers. Let me tell you something, I worked really hard trying to find those high level footages for characters like Krauser and Tezok, but here I just couldn't do it. It was actually impossible. There was like hardly any info. And it's upsetting for sure, because I would have loved to catch some stuff. This is the only thing I was able to find, sadly, in terms of like this character being played. However, in Soulcalibur 6, that's a different matter entirely. Astaroth is actually played quite the bit in tournaments, and he's very commonly represented. So maybe that's worth doing a deep dive, maybe the evolution of Astaroth to see what's different with each variation. But in terms of this one, no high level plays besides this fella performing bits against this assassin player. Sad as it is to say. Guys, I hope you liked and enjoyed the video. I had a ton of time put into this one, I had a ton of bit of fun. And I'll tell you something, as someone who played Astaroth, it was very interesting looking back at his older iteration that I tried when I was a kid. When I got older, I fell in love with him in Soulcalibur 6, and going back to it, to see what that was all about when I played Keelik and Astaroth, it was interesting. It was very unique for sure, but I've got to say, I'm a little upset with the ending of this one. I sadly can't shout some type of sick as hell high level player, but at the end of the day, it was a ton of fun to make. So let me know what grappler I should cover, and I'm actually thinking about doing an evolution of one. Maybe rotund one. But yeah fellas, peace out, and I hope you guys have a good one. See.